So, as we get closer to the Halloween season, I have to talk about one of my favorite scary movies, Poltergeist, directed by Tobe Hooper and produced by Steven Spielberg. While there are many other films that are far scarier, more messed up, there's nothing more resonant than the first film you were ever truly scared by, and I remember when this came out in 1982. It had all the right elements to scare the crap out of a kid, including spooky trees, people peeling their faces off, and of course that damn clown at the end. As part of my Halloween Scarefest, that was one of the first films I watched this year, and admittedly it's been a while since I've seen it, so I'd forgotten a couple elements. It was really different for me to go back and view this with a critical eye. I think there's a lot of reasons why Poltergeist works as well as it does. There's always been that primal fear about it. It just resonates with you. But this last viewing, I also noticed that it's also a family story in the sense that this family survives simply through their love for each other, which I think is a really interesting element and one of the things that a lot of horror films don't really do as well as they should. A lot of horror films make the mistake of having you not really care for the protagonist, not really empathize with them. In many cases, horror films have their characters simply there for stock slaughter. So it doesn't matter if they have a backstory or what they're doing or what their life was like before. They're thrown into an element, it's just a matter of time before they're hunted down and killed, and there you go, you get your quota. Although the body count is pretty low in Poltergeist, although Carol Ann's pet bird dies at the beginning of the movie, there's a lot of gore and there's a lot of scares. This one really focuses on trying to explain the spiritual phenomena that takes place. The film starts pretty benign. Freeling family goes around their day-to-day, getting ready for school, they're excited about a new pool being put in their backyard. There's a couple elements where Steve and Diane are fooling around their bedroom, smoking pot, something that just completely went past my radar when I was a kid. Now, other things I had never noticed before was the dog's name, E-Buzz. And then I thought, what is the deal with E-Buzz? What a weird name. The dog was named after E-Buzz Miller, an art critic character Dan Aykroyd played on Saturday Night Live. The only reason I noticed that, it was on the dog's bowl when he was eating. One of the other things that I hadn't realized was the Carol Ann theme, that haunting, soothing lullaby that actually has lyrics. The song is actually properly called Bless This House. And it's set up like a lullaby prayer meant to watch over the family and make sure everyone's safe from the night. Well, I can tell you this much, it did a crappy job because everything went bad. There was no house to bless at the end of this film, so not doing good, song. There's not a lot of hints that something's truly amiss in this house at the beginning of the movie, although the opening scene is great because Carol Ann comes down, stares at the TV, starts talking to it as if holding a conversation with it, and then when the family asks what's going on, she's like, "They're here." One of the most iconic film lines out there. Of course, as time goes on, the spirits make themselves a little more known. It's usually real basic things like stacking chairs or moving objects across the kitchen floor. Nothing really too weird to worry about until one night. This, of course, is the infamous tree scene where it's thundering and lightning and Robbie is scared and Steven comes in and gives him that wonderful little trick to count down between thunderclaps and lightning flashes to see how far the storm is going away. And of course that count gets more and more and more intense. And then the freaking tree reaches out and grabs Robbie and starts eating him. That was trauma number one for me as a kid. What I hadn't remembered about that scene, however, all this crap is going on. This tornado appears out of nowhere and comes in wrecking damage to everything and sucks up the evil tree into this dimensional vortex thing. None of the neighbors notice this. No one says anything. No one's like, "Oh hey, giant hell tornado coming, sucks up evil tree." And of course, by this point, this is all a giant distraction for the spirits to capture Carol Ann. Of course, the family's an emotional wreck throughout all of this, and it's played really well, and they go to a paranormal investigation society within one of the universities. And it's really interesting. It's almost like Ghostbusters, but far less sarcastic. And Steven looks like crap. Actually, the whole family looks like crap. At this point, they're sleeping down in the living room, and they're having nothing to do with Carol Ann's old room because they can't even get in at this point anymore. It's so haunted, and all these demonic spirits are floating around in it, and they're not letting them in. One of the other things that I noticed when Steven was talking to his boss on that hilltop, the boss makes a reference to, "Oh, one of your children was born in this house," and that child being Carol Ann. That is the most likely explanation as to why the spirits are bound to her, because in many ways she truly is part of that house. But of course, the paranormal investigators, never having seen anything of this level, most paranormal investigations are usually temperature changes or creakings or something moves slightly, or it's nothing big, nothing like how the movie presents. And of course, they're all way out of their league. With that comes trauma number 2, where the investigator goes to get a snack out of the kitchen, grabs a bite of chicken. The chicken's super nasty and covered with maggots. The steak is moving across the kitchen counter, and then he goes to the bathroom to wash himself off and starts peeling his face off. And that is, oh my god, level nasty. Even today, the effect still holds up pretty well. It doesn't look quite as realistic, but man, it's gross because he just starts screaming, and then all of a sudden, as soon as it's in full effect, it's over and back to normal. Of course, he didn't come back to the house the next night. At this point, they get a spiritual medium named Tangina, played by Zelda Rubinstein. She comes in, gives them the information they need to find Carol Ann, tells them about the beast, which in many cases I just liked it when it was a faceless, shapeless entity and not Reverend Cain in the later sequels. I just liked that it was like this thing in the background. But Diane goes into the ghostly vortex to find Carol Ann and does. And at that point, this house is clean. Herein lies another one of my issues with this movie. Why, after all that, did they not get the hell out of that house right after that? What I'm guessing is the next day they didn't really explain the time-lapse. Carol Ann had seemingly forgotten about all the events that had taken place. But you know, when they're moving, they're not even moving furniture. They're supposedly there on their last night. All their furniture's there. They let the kids sleep back in the room where all this stuff took place. What are you doing, guys? And of course the house and the beast want Carol Ann back, so they try yet again to pull her into the closet. Now Robbie has something new to face, and here is trauma number 3, the clown. The clown is messed up and evil, and I actually have a true story about that one. I actually have seen that clown in person. When I lived in Las Vegas, I was working on a film where the talent holding was within the Forum Shops of Caesar's Palace. They had this movie memorabilia store there that we'd walk by whenever we would go between scenes, and in the window of this movie memorabilia place was that damn clown. And let me tell you, seeing that clown in person opens up that primal childlike fear, because I could immediately feel all the hairs on my arms stand up, and it was just like, ugh. You know, obviously being older, it didn't really affect me as much, but just seeing it in person was super creepy. It gets worse. The next night, as we're shooting on set, we walk by again, same movie memorabilia place. I look in the window again. That damn clown is gone. I don't know if someone bought it, they moved it, it was waiting to kill me. Yeah, if I had chills on my arm the night before, I just wanted to get the hell out of there. I was so glad that the movie wrapped shortly after. Anyway, at this point, the house tries to reclaim Carol Ann. Diane saves her and Robbie from the house, and everything goes straight to hell. The house really wants Carol Ann. It starts pushing up bodies out of the ground, and they were actually real skeletons, much cheaper to use than plaster cast skeletons, so when you rewatch that pool scene, keep that in mind. Because one of the other side conversations that Steven and his boss had was they moved all the bodies over from when they redeveloped the land and said they moved everything. The truth was, they removed the headstones, but they kept the body, in one of Steven's best freakouts ever. Steven just loses his mind on his boss. And at this point, the house is super pissed that it didn't get Carol Ann. It's still trying everything it possibly can, and basically eats itself. The end. Bless this house indeed. There is a lot to like about Poltergeist. One of the things I noticed, especially in this era where we're kind of falling in love with the 1980s again, having that nostalgia feel-good fest, is how 1980s that movie looks. You think of something like Stranger Things, where they constantly have little 80s references and items all around. This movie was chock full of them. They had all the classic Star Wars Kenner toys. They had Toys R Us pillows featuring Jeffrey and his family. At the end, the family stays at Holiday Inn back in the days when it had that incredible looking great sign. And everything in that movie was so incredibly 80s, which made sense back then because it was 1982. Poltergeist is a great film. It really tries to give a better explanation of ghosts and the afterlife, and really takes everything seriously. They take their time in pacing everything, so by the time everything goes bad, just when you think you see the big climactic scene, that's only a breather. And of course there's things like the Poltergeist curse, which a lot of production and cast members died shortly after the events of these films. There's also a lot of speculation who really directed it. Tobe Hooper or Steven Spielberg. I see a lot of Spielberg touches, so even if he didn't directly or fully take charge of the entire film, he definitely had a very strong hand in how he wanted this to be. And while I've seen the other sequels, I really think this is one of those films, like many of the other films in the 1980s, they should have stopped at one. It told everything it needed to in this story, and there didn't need to be additional movies, especially when the quality declined. I was glad to add Poltergeist back to my rotation of Halloween films. That's one that definitely needs to stay there, and while it lacks the body count and gore effects of later films, there's still a lot of spooky in the unknown, especially when it taps into all those early childhood fears. Well, that's it for Poltergeist. If you have any thoughts on it, please share it down in the comments below. Did you like the sequels? Did you think it needed to stay only as one? What were some of your favorite memories from the film? As always, let me know, and until that next time, I'll see you. Happy Halloween.